Okay, good to go.
Well, thank you, Dominica, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge I am here in the city of Ottawa, which is Indigenous Algonquin territory, and so I thank the the Algonquin people for letting me live, play, and work on this territory. And I'm sure you all agree that with that wherever you might be. This is a session that we had originally envisioned to hold at our CHRA Congress, which was supposed to have taken place in Saskatoon in April 2020. That didn't happen for obvious reasons, as someone likes to call it, the pandy got in the way. So we're doing it in this virtual setting, and so we're very pleased to be able to do so. As I think all of you know, coming from municipalities, housing providers, no matter where they are in the country, are always looking for a more simplified, less complex way of doing things in their operations. One of those concerns in terms of operational focus is how they can essentially apply to different programs across different orders of government. We often hear that it can be an onerous process, that it can be difficult, and that there's not always necessary alignment between different orders of government's programs. So we were really interested and keen to learn more when earlier this year, CMHC and the City of Calgary announced a new model to allow housing providers to apply for a number of programs within that jurisdiction. And insofar as it was really a simplified process and a process that has really been welcomed by housing providers in the City of Calgary, we thought that there would be value in sharing that model and sharing that approach with all of you. And there's really, I guess, two purposes for doing this. One is to provide you with a bit of the background information in terms of how this model and how this approach worked. And secondly, it's really to encourage you to potentially replicate this kind of an approach or model within your own jurisdiction. And so that's really sort of the hidden motive, if you will, behind this session. Before introducing our speakers, I'll just say that I think, and I may be proven wrong, but I believe that this is the first time that at CHRA we've ever hosted a webinar specifically for our municipal members. So although we're thrilled that you were able to come, I just do want to reiterate as well that we not only value you as members, but we work very closely, in particular with groups like FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, to promote housing and housing affordability with the federal government. And it's a partnership that is incredibly important for us. So we're really, really thrilled that you as our municipal members are able to join us and continue to support us in that work. So I'll take a moment now just to quickly introduce our speakers. First, from the City of Calgary, very happy to have Sarah Woodgate, who is the president of the Calgary Housing Company. And she was really instrumental in devising this system, and you'll hear from a moment more about her efforts and her team's efforts in that regard. And then from CMHC, we're very pleased to be joined by Pamela Hine, who is Vice President of Partnerships and Promotions with CMHC. Some of you may know Pam from her previous role as a board member for CHRA. And so now she's gone on to doing some great work with CMHC, and she's located up in Whitehorse, Yukon. I should also add that Pam is joined by Cody Kraus, who is a CMHC specialist, or excuse me, senior manager, also located in Calgary. And we're also joined by Diane Imbo, who is in Winnipeg, and who can answer questions as well and provide any specific details. My last point before turning it over to Sarah is, je vais mentionner que la plupart de ces présentations sera en anglais. Les stats sont en anglais. Mais si vous avez des questions, des commentaires en français, on peut faire la traduction et je crois que Diane toi-même peut répondre, excusez, peut répondre aux questions à SCHL en français aussi. So as you can tell, most of this presentation will be in English, but please don't hesitate to answer, or excuse me, to pose questions in French. With that, I will then pass it over to Sarah. And again, Sarah, thank you for joining, and the virtual floor is yours.
Merci, Jeff. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here today. I have a unique role at the City of Calgary, so I'm responsible for affordable housing for the City of Calgary as Director of Calgary Housing, who provides services for affordable housing citywide. And then also I'm president of Calgary Housing Company, a wholly owned subsidiary run by a board that provides housing. And so today I'm really excited to be here to talk to municipal colleagues about our experience in trying to increase the supply of housing in our city. And Calgary is located on Treaty 7 lands, the traditional territory, and I just like to recognize that, that these are the lands that we are talking about today. I wanted to provide a little bit of context on the next slide about affordable housing in Calgary. And so one of the things that's important to the program I'm going to speak about today is that it's based on the context of the Calgary community. And so I'm really excited to talk about what we've been doing and maybe get some ideas going about what other municipalities can do. And I think what we're doing in Calgary might be something to consider in other cities, but it is a pilot specific to the Calgary context. So in some ways it's to get some ideas about how we can make it easier for nonprofits to develop housing through the strengths that we have, or for the sector to develop. And so in terms of Calgary, just really quickly, who we are and what's happening here is that we have a significant undersupply of non-market housing supply. We need to double it to be average with other municipalities. And so we only have 3.6%, 50% of that is provided by government. And we need 15,000 units just to become average with big cities. And like many municipalities, the gap is growing. We we're behind about 1,700 units a year as the city grows, and anticipate the need for non-market housing to be about 100,000 households by 2025. We've had a consistent rate of 18% of the population in need of affordable housing for decades, which is probably similar to other municipalities. What's unique about us compared to Toronto and Vancouver, for example, is that we don't have an affordability challenge the way that those cities do. Only 4% of households earning over $80,000 a year are overspending on housing. So our focus is on non-market housing for low and moderate income households. What that means to us is about $65,000 a year and below. And so that's what this strategy is targeted towards. The other thing that's unique about Calgary, potentially, is that our citizens have been saying year over year that affordable housing is one of their top priorities. And so it is a priority of our city council. Citizen satisfaction surveys have been changing in the last few years with the economic crisis that we're having in Alberta. And in the last year, citizens have started saying they want less service, they'll spend to have a tax reduction. However, only 6% of households want to spend less on affordable housing. And this is very significant since the city is not the primary funder of affordable housing. And there's council interest in addressing affordable housing where we can. And the citizen demand is reflecting that. So 93% of citizens have identified that affordable housing is important, which is very, very high, and is a reason why we have the ability to bring this type of a program on based on citizen interest. On the next slide. So one of the things that we've been focusing on since 2015 is, like many municipalities, we have a number of nonprofit providers. We have about 85, and the majority of them have one building or a handful of buildings that they operate. And so one of the successes we've had is in the last 20 years, we've been able to go from nonprofits not having development capacity to having development capacity. We had a big fundraising campaign and a plan to end homelessness that has helped create the capacity for nonprofits to have development expertise, to be interested in taking on risk, and to grow. Not all of them, but a number of them. So the city has identified a strategy that with that huge gap in non-market housing, one of the things that's important to us is to scale up the nonprofits so that they have equity and assets and have more economies of scale. So we're targeting the scaling up of nonprofits to at least 1,200, 1,500 units where they can have more scalability, and also a diversity of nonprofits that can reach a broad cross-section of housing needs in Calgary. The City of Calgary is also, council doesn't support property tax dollars going into affordable housing. And for the most part, they don't. However, the City Council has identified an interest in providing land to nonprofits. When we have surveyed them on capacity, access to land at an affordable cost was a top barrier for nonprofits to develop. And so through that work, City Council has created support towards providing, instead of grants, discounted land, surplus land, land that would be appropriate for affordable housing as a contribution. The other things that we're doing to scale up nonprofits are municipal levers that include a grant that is funded from tax dollars to pay for development fees, most development fees, and also some seed funding, and also expedited approvals. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but we've been very successful at reducing, as time is money, the approval times for nonprofits. So those are all stacked together to try to help reduce the barriers for nonprofits to develop. And then the main focus of this program is also to have leverage, to position Calgary to be successful in receiving federal and provincial affordable housing dollars. And so municipal land is a key component of that. So what we're working on is this concept of the very difficult process that a nonprofit or affordable housing provider has in trying to put together a deal. And so this puzzle identifies the complexity before nonprofits. We find that it actually could take 10 years before a nonprofit is able to put a deal together. They have to have a land parcel. They have to have work within different levels of government to meet their criteria for affordable housing if programs exist. And then they have an application process working through land use. And so what the goal of this program is to try to figure out how to make a single stop shop to make it as easy as possible for the nonprofits who want to build in order to build. And so that's what this program is about. It's trying to streamline and coordinate all of these processes that are often separate for a nonprofit organization. Partnering with CMHC in our non-market land sale has helped the two orders of government to reimagine the coordination of the services. And by removing barriers, it can help enable the nonprofits to build faster with a more predictable pipeline, because there's a lot of risk that the nonprofits or the interested party has to take on. And so we're able to remove those risks. There's also a lot of benefit from an administrative point of view, and I'm going to talk about that more in terms of trying to get affordable housing programs out the door. In the past, in 2016 and before, we didn't have a formal process for the disposition of land for affordable housing. And what would happen is nonprofits would approach a city staff or a councillor with an idea, and they would be all ad hocly considered. And so a nonprofit might know about a piece of land that the city owns that might appear to be sitting vacant, and talk to multiple departments expressing an interest to develop a project. There might be a notice of motion at council or a one-off negotiation on a deal. That usually took years, in order to put it together, and it wasn't a transparent, efficient process. So what we piloted, which led to this more recent iteration, is to clarify and identify parcels that would be appropriate for affordable housing, and put them out through a coordinated and transparent sales process. So after the first pilot, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, in 2019, Council, from the success of that pilot, approved a non-market housing land disposition policy, which allows us to offer up to 10 parcels sold at below market value every 2 years. And the goal is to have a predictable supply, and so that over time, the nonprofits can grow. The policy is aimed to align with federal and provincial opportunities for affordable housing to position Calgary for success in increasing the housing supply. It creates a formal, predictable process that is based not on highest price for land, but overall value of the land application. All of our sites are, I'll just mention too, are identified through a GIS process. We have undertaken surveys of preferences for people seeking affordable housing. And so the locations are chosen for proximity to schools, if it's family housing, grocery stores, and affordable living. So transit is a key target for the lands. It's an open bid process, and applicants, in our case, must be a nonprofit. That wouldn't necessarily be what other municipalities might target, but our specific program is going back to that goal of addressing the highest housing needs in Calgary, low and moderate income housing. And so we're targeting nonprofits for this program. We do have other programs where development industry has the opportunity for city lands for affordable housing, private sector. But this particular program is currently targeted for nonprofits. And so the other tool that made this possible is that the provincial government in Alberta changed the Municipal Government Act. And only just a couple of years ago, we're able to create agreements on title, which allow the city to ensure there's a public benefit while transferring lands to a nonprofit. We believe the land leases really limits the nonprofit's ability to build equity and have more financial sustainability. So our goal is to transfer ownership, however, ensure that the public benefit is met. And so that housing agreement is a new tool that we've been able to use for this program. So here's a little bit of detail in terms of how it works. We offer land at below market value. We have the fast track planning approvals, and we have the housing incentive program to offset rebates and pre-development grants, which is a municipal contribution to the development. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation in the first round partnered on seed funding. And then in the second round, we've also have now piloted co-investment funds and financial analysis and expertise in underwriting. So what happens is that we release the lands with one application for both programs, and CMHC and the city team are able to evaluate them concurrently. And going back to that puzzle, typically these would be done separately and over different periods of time. So we coordinate that land release at a timing that works for both, and we're able to evaluate it together. And this way, the city has a good idea of the land use and the planning proposal, whether that fits in terms of expertise. And we're also able to have an understanding of CMHC's comfort level of the viability of the finances and the financial expertise. And so really exciting to be able to do those two processes concurrently. While they're concurrent, each organization makes the final decision for their own programs. And so I just want to explain that really clearly, though, because the city isn't deciding for CMHC, and CMHC isn't deciding on the land sale. We're providing advice through a collaborative process. This really cuts red tape, and it makes it a lot easier for a nonprofit to get a project underway. So I'm going to just highlight some of the successes from the first round. And I know Pam's going to talk a little bit more about this CMHC program. but the results are quite significant. So the first round, we had seed funding included, and our team really benefited from the expertise of CMHC as well on the financial side of evaluating the proposals. 166 new units were created on 6 sites, and the construction was completed in 18 months of closing. So most of these developments are open, or they're going to be open by the end of this year. And the financial return to the city using $6.4 million of land contribution, or foregone revenue for the city, we were able to have $30 million in benefit. And 8 of this was through philanthropic or corporate money, and 22 million in federal government funding. And so this is a significant return to the city, being able to achieve affordable housing goals, and also very quickly. This program does not support land banking. Our goal is to make sure that we're working towards projects that just need that land to get in the ground. And a couple of highlights is that we are able to achieve a good cross-section of different types of housing, because the affordable housing need is very diverse. And so Homes for Heroes was a new charity that was started first in Canada, and they're looking to go across Canada. It's tiny homes partnering with ATCO on a site that previously had 4 units. There's 19 homes and a community building, and it opened last fall. And so a fabulous development. They actually have one now planned and going forward in Edmonton, and are looking to go across the country to provide homes for veterans. The next project is home ownership. Habitat for Humanity, who is a partner with municipalities located across Canada, providing home ownership. The properties that were purchased here from Habitat were in an area that is maybe underdeveloped. It was purchased for a road widening that didn't take place, and it was a bit of a risk for Habitat to understand the demand for potential homeowners. So we staggered these 2 agreements for them to do one first. Turned out that they had a lot of demand, and large families have the opportunity to live in here, and it has spurred economic development in the area. It's always risky for a developer to go into an area that might be having less real estate investment. And this has actually helped us as a municipality achieve community development goals, and also bring more homeownership opportunities. And then the third one is Home Space. They provide permanent supportive housing, and they received 3 sites in the first land sale. This is a 74 unit, it's their largest site, concrete downtown space that's going to open later this year. And so we're really excited about this mix that we also achieved in this initiative. And so hopefully this gives a good example of how a municipality could partner with CMHC to achieve local benefit, local interest. We're in the final stages of the second land sale, which had the co-investment funding. And I'll just speak a little bit about some of the lessons learned. We definitely aligned criteria to streamline and accelerate financing and development approvals. And so as a municipality with the federal requirements, we changed our own requirements somewhat. One of the benefits of this is not only just having the housing built, but for administration and maintaining to ensure that the public benefit is met. It's actually easier if we have the nonprofit reporting the same affordability criteria to the municipality and CMHC. So we've streamlined all of that, and we've also developed legal mechanisms to protect the affordable housing investment. The one comment I'd have is trying to create one housing program by one government is hard. I'm sure all you know how hard it is to get to launch something within your own government. It is even harder to coordinate the interests of multiple orders of government. And so it is a lot of work, and it takes innovation and creativity and flexibility. And I think that for us, it's still a work in progress. It'd be great to have some of the nonprofits who participated provide some comments into their experience. We're still learning how to streamline and manage risk will make it easy for the nonprofits. And so it's definitely a learning process and work in progress. We don't have a silver bullet on that, but I think it's worth it. So those are my main comments, and I can turn it over to Pam.
Thank you, Sarah. And for those that may have joined a little later, I'm Pam Hine, Vice President of Partnership and Promotion for CMHC. I am here in Whitehorse, Yukon, and I'm on the traditional territory of Kwanlin-Dun First Nation and Ton Quechin Council. And I would like to thank them for the privilege of being able to live, work, and play on their traditional land. So I'd like just to take an opportunity to speak about how we've expanded our partnership with the City of Calgary through the Memorandum of Understanding for Land Sales number 2. So as mentioned by Sarah, we not only include the resources and programming, the alignment to the programming for successful land sales proponents, but we also bring financial underwriting and project expertise to the table. It's important to note that although we are expanding our partnership through the lessons learned as Sarah has just gone through, it is still considered a pilot project. It is complex, and we are working with the city and the proponents to make sure that we can continue to streamline. So even though we're now moving to land sales number 2, it's still a pilot, and we're still learning. I can give you a few highlights, and some of this I think Sarah has already mentioned in the first one. But some of the highlights for the land recipients is that the application to the, normally applications to the co-investment fund are reviewed, scored, and ranked against other applications across the nation. But participation and partnership with the city has a bit of a competitive advantage. We do align of the city's bid requirements with CMHC's application requirements. So again, they only have to prepare the information once, and eliminates preparing the 2 separate packages. So they are application ready for our funding mechanisms. And as Sarah mentioned, each government does have their own approvals. However, they are being coordinated in order to reduce the red tape and the bouncing back and forth. So it does allow for it easier for nonprofits. The table that you're looking at now just kind of highlights how we've aligned the timelines. So the City of Calgary's action and the role they play on the left-hand side, and the CMHC actions are on the right-hand side. So it does show in the timeline how we're working together to keep the approvals going concurrently, as was previously suggested. So it does help the proponent. They're not going through one, have to go backtrack to the other one. And again, we are looking at keeping that timeline with starting in the summer, and so just around a year from the point of when the sales land is awarded to when we can actually get the actual approval processes moving forward. We can go to the next slide. So the ultimate goal is that the project can start development with financing approved and in place as soon as the development permits are approved. This has been one example where CMHC can work with a municipality to advance affordable housing. Of course, there are other opportunities where partnership and collaboration can align municipal initiatives with the goal of the National Housing Strategy. And it's so important that we do work with you, because the national strategy provides a framework, but you provide the local solutions. So we really want to be able to look and work with you to provide those local solutions. For municipalities well on their way to advance affordable housing, obviously there is the collaboration as suggested and showcased here with the MOU and our partnership with the City of Calgary on how we can remove barriers to develop affordable housing by streamlining our application processes, ensuring that affordability goals are met. and that leveraging our financing and our project expertise. But for those municipalities who are just starting their journey or their discussion on on their involvement in affordable housing, we also can provide advice. So we have the opportunity to do research and best practices, to inform policy and implementation tools, as well as working with you to identify your housing needs in your community. Next slide. So as noted throughout the presentation, CMHC has a suite of programs and services to help municipalities achieve their affordable housing goals. And our outreach team is really your starting point. As shown on the screen, their mandate is to generate new opportunities for our products, programs, and services. We are there to inspire interest and break down information barriers around developing housing, affordable housing. We're there also to foster and support government and your housing industry stakeholder relationships, and obviously to create the new partnerships for affordable housing creation. The outreach team has regional representation as indicated on this slide. So whether you're just starting to talk about your municipality's role in affordable housing, or you have an initiative in the planning stage, please reach out to the team member in your region to see how we can help you achieve success. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I think we'd like to open it up for questions.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you both, Pam and Sarah, for not just the presentations, but for your leadership in bringing about these initiatives and these arrangements. So we'll first of all just open it up and see if, as Dominica has mentioned, if you do have questions or comments, please feel free to type them in the chat box or raise your virtual hand, I guess. And if Dominica sees anyone, Dominica, feel free to direct them. I do have just a starting off question though, and I guess it's really for both of you. What's been the feedback that you've received from the housing providers, predominantly in Calgary, to this approach? Have you seen, just a different culture, more successful applications? So what's been their reaction?
I can speak to that first. It's been a very positive reaction from nonprofits. They've been very collaborative as well in terms of discussing development interests. And I think that the nonprofits generally have a goal to try to optimize the land for the community. There might be a competitive element, but I think more that it's very collaborative in terms of seeing this as an opportunity to support affordable housing community-wide. So that old process that I mentioned before, that really wasn't a process, it was ad hoc. There was a lot of competition, and it could be very kind of fractious because there's no open transparency. And having something laid out that if you don't have readiness for development now, but you might in 2 years, this program is here. The length of it being certain. So it's been very, very successful in terms of creating collaboration and a common goal in Calgary for everyone to work together to increase affordable housing. And I think that the added benefit of being able to work with multiple, with government together has been significant in terms of coordination.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add on from CMHC's perspective, the fact that we have coordinated the application process and the applications are coming in because the proponents are already working through the details. So they're thinking what we need and aligning those pieces. So it has streamlined that as well and allowed the applications to come in complete and we can work directly with the city and with the proponents. So it certainly has streamlined that process as well.
Great, thank you.
Jeff, we have one hand up. Colton, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, go ahead.
Thanks everyone for putting this together. It's very interesting to me. I'm a project manager in Edmonton. My question is about like who does the intake legwork? I guess, does this collaboration mean there's a single intake for the land offering and the CMHC financing, and who manages and assists with applicants through that process?
I can start that off. In that old model that I mentioned, we had nonprofits would go to every department separately. They would go to land department, the housing area, the planning department, and it took a lot of municipal resources. It was actually draining, and the nonprofit would get a different answer. They might get a positive answer from planning and a negative answer from land. What we did in 2016 is when they created Calgary Housing as a business unit, is that we have all of the service coordinated in our business unit, and we have key people that are point of contact for everything. So, and an internal process to understand what's happening between the different business areas. So it's sort of a one-stop shop within the city. And so in this case, for the nonprofit land sale, our real estate department, Janet McCubbin, whose name is on the slide, and she has been a key lead through both land sales, was in the housing team, but is now a position in the housing team that's embedded in the real estate area. And she takes all of the applications. And so it's through one person, but on the back end, we coordinate that. We have someone assigned for expedited planning that sits in the planning department, but on the housing team. And so it's really been efficient with reduced runaround for the nonprofits or the applicant, and also for staff in terms of not having duplication internally.
Great. Thank you. So there's a written question we've received from Charlie from the city of Regina. And Charlie, hi to you folks in Regina. I keep remembering my former colleague, Michael Fougere, when he was at the Saskatchewan Construction Association. So always good to see Regina. And actually, Charlie had the exact same question I was going to ask, which, and in Charlie's words is, Regina doesn't have an active land disposal program for affordable housing, but offers grants and tax abatements. So rather than using the land disposal program, would CMHC consider a similar integrated process or an MOU with municipalities that don't have land-specific programs? So in other words, would CMHC be open to a similar arrangement, just using a different municipal vehicle?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And, the MOU with Calgary, and that's why even as we're going into the second one, we still call it a pilot project because it is unique. And we are able to join this partnership and streamline the process based on the program on land disposition that the Calgary has at their benefit. But we recognize that each municipality will be unique, and CMHC is prepared to work on solutions that will work for those municipalities. So as stated, not all will have a land sale process, but there are other areas where CMHC can propose alignment and work with other policy guidance to bring out financial expertise to proponents working on affordable housing projects. So again, my response is to connect to your rep on the outreach team and to start those conversations. And we will be able to work with you to see what might be a good solution in your community.
And so Pam, just to confirm that, so if a municipality was interested into entering into this kind of an arrangement with whatever sort of program or policy they have in place, so you're suggesting the first step is reach out to the regional CMHC representative and to start that conversation and take it from there?
Yeah, exactly. Because then the regional rep can be the one that can figure out what the municipality, where their goals are, where their priorities are, how that aligns with our programs and services. And then we can take that and build and see what kind of alignment and partnership that we can achieve that meets that local municipality's priorities. So yes, reaching out to the outreach rep would be your first step.
And Pam, this is probably a no-brainer type question, but my understanding is CMHC is very open, and would I be correct in saying is at the point of encouraging municipalities to pursue this kind of arrangement?
Yeah, you know, we all know the importance of housing in our communities, especially affordable housing. And as Sarah's indicated, bringing affordable housing projects forward is complex, and we do need all levels of government working together. So yes, we definitely encourage having those conversations, and to see what we can do to help all municipalities to be successful.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions, either via raising your virtual hand or through the chat room? Okay. Well, if not, we're all respectful of your time, and so I imagine folks wouldn't be too upset if we did end a bit early. But first of all, I want to take again a moment just to thank Sarah, Pam, Cozy, Diane for joining us today, presenting what is, as you described it, a unique model. And we really hope for the municipalities on the line that this is something you'll consider in your jurisdiction. I think Sarah summarized it well, that clearly not-for-profits are finding this to be a very positive development, and so it's something that in the benefit of trying to accelerate affordable housing development, this is something that can be replicated in whichever form it takes in your own jurisdiction. So again, Sarah, Pam, thank you for the presentation. Thank you all of you for participating. We will share this video call as well, and so if your colleagues didn't have a chance to listen in, we will make it available. And with that, I again want to say thank you and wish you all a great day, and we will be in touch with you all very soon. So une fois, merci pour votre attention et bonne journée à toi.